Startups and SMEs risk penalties and stunted growth by ignoring legal compliance. Newsflash: compliance is not optional, it's a must. I'm going to give you the ultimate compliance checklist for startups, SMEs, and even new businesses to keep you on the right track. In fact, to start you up the right way with the law. Hi guys, I'm Nneoma, a corporate and tech lawyer passionate about helping startups and entrepreneurs build and protect their business, their technology, their intellectual property, and their future. Whether you're launching a new business or you're trying to scale an existing one, compliance can be daunting and overwhelming for anyone. But by the end of this video, you'll have the ultimate compliance checklist so that you have a clear roadmap for success. Whether you're launching a new business or trying to scale an existing one, compliance can be daunting and overwhelming for anybody. Because I know startups and SMEs are in different categories and stages of operation, this checklist is going to be divided into two. There's going to be a beginner checklist, which is applicable to absolute beginners. Say you are a freelancer trying to transition into owning a business, you are a startup just incorporated, or you are someone who just has an idea and you're thinking about the roadmap. What should you do? What steps should you take? That's part A of this checklist. Part B is for the more advanced businesses. Say you are just on the cusp of fundraising, or say you are even right in the thick of things with fundraising, or maybe in your series stage, or you're even about to exit, or you are a more established business, not necessarily within the tech industry, and you're thinking about a more advanced checklist for your business. This checklist is going to be divided into two categories. There's going to be one for the beginners and there's going to be one for the advanced. Beginners, obviously, is applicable to absolute beginners. If you're a freelancer trying to transition into owning a startup, if you're a startup already incorporated, if you're someone with an idea and you're thinking about starting a company and you want to know the compliance steps you need to take, the beginner version is for you. Now, if you are more advanced, you are, say, on the cusp of fundraising, or you are right in the middle of fundraising, or you're about to exit, or if you're even more advanced in any other type of business, not necessarily affiliated to technology, the advanced compliance checklist will be for you. So now that we've got that sorted, let's dive right in with the beginner compliance checklist. Item number 1 to tick off your list as a beginner is obviously picking the right entity for your business. Now, there are so many different types of business entities. You have the LLCs, you have, if you're in the US, you have the S Corp, the C corporations, the B corporations. If you are in Nigeria, you have the private companies limited by shares, you have the limited by guarantees, you have the public companies, you have the unlimited companies, you have the partnerships, and on it goes for different countries, different jurisdictions, and different laws that are applicable in each and every one of them. So the first thing you need to do, identify the type of structure that fits your business idea. What I like to do with my clients is I like to plan with the end in mind. So think about yourself and think about your business idea. What is the absolute zenith that you want to reach? What is that point where if you reach it, you will satisfy and tell yourself, yes, I have arrived. What is that point? Now, once you have identified that point, plan backwards. Say, okay, for me to be able to reach this point, what kind of business structure will allow me get there? Because a company limited by guarantee will not fulfill the same functions as a company limited by shares. They are all different. They all have their capacities and their capabilities, and their tax incentives and obligations. So you need to figure out the right step and what works for you. Number 2, register your business name. This goes without saying that even if you come up with the right structure, you still need to register your business name, especially if you were not ready at the very moment to incorporate your business. You still need to register the business name. The essence of doing that is that it reserves the name for you, so that whenever you are ready to use the name, you can just re-register it as a company. So the transition is easier rather than waiting, and then when you're finally ready, you now find out the name is taken. Some other business is already using it and has created, a brand image with the name. Step 3, get the necessary licenses and permits. Specific industries demand specific permits and licenses to be able to operate as a company. Specific companies determine or deserve certain licenses to be able to practice. If you are in the tech world, fintechs obviously require certain licenses and permits that regular companies or regular software development companies will not need or will not require. Now, if you're a regular business, certain or if you're even a professional, say you're in the pharmaceutical industry, or you are an engineer, or you are an architect, these require certain permits and licenses that qualifies you to own, manage, direct, and administer such a company per your qualifications and per your industry. Step number 4 in this compliance checklist of ours: identify and protect your intellectual property. If you forget anything else I say in this video, please do not forget this one. Please do not forget this one. I see it so many times where startups, entrepreneurs, they forget to identify and protect their intellectual assets on time. And so what happens then is that you give others the room to take advantage of you, because now someone else can go and register before you, and you can't say anything about that because they registered before you. How else do you stop infringement? Step 5, comply with tax laws. There are different tax incentives and tax obligations for different categories of companies in different jurisdictions. You need to find out which works for your business structure and take full advantage of it. There are different tax incentives for smaller companies that larger companies are not entitled to. The same way, there are tax incentives for larger companies that smaller companies cannot apply for or even have. So you need to find out which is applicable to you and take full advantage of it. Tax laws, tax compliance, very, very important. Step 6, adhere to employment laws. Do not misclassify your employees, because there are several categories of employees, and like all other things I've said in this video, they all come with their implications. Each category comes with its implications. Now, the categories of employees is a whole other video that I will get to. But for this particular one, you need to understand that there are voluntary staff, there are full-term staff, there are part-time staff, there are independent contractors. Know who is who, classify them properly, and treat them properly. Because there are different tax benefits and tax laws that apply to each. There are different compensation benefits that apply to each. There are different responsibilities that each have. So you need to take care of each and every one of these. As a small business, as a startup, as an absolute beginner, try to limit the various categories of employees that you have. This would also significantly reduce the amount of compliance you need to keep up with. Step 7, prioritize data protection and cybersecurity compliance. If you are a company that handles, assesses, processes, collects, stores, uses, or even in any other way manages data of any kind, shape, or form, you need to comply with the various data laws. Now, across board, there are common data privacy compliance requirements that are applicable in every jurisdiction. For instance, data portability. Can you transfer data from one country to the next? Yes, you can, but with certain exceptions. Find out what those exceptions are. You need to conduct regular compliance audits. Is your company prepared for that? Find out and implement it. Do you have a data protection officer? Find out. These and many more are the common threads that run across all data protection laws in many countries. So once you're able to comply with these few, you are largely certain of compliance with data protection and privacy. Now, as for cybersecurity, obviously there are certain no-brainer measures that you need to put in place, and there are also certain legal ones that you need to put in place. But like with data protection, there are common threads that run across all of them. For instance, quickly notify your clients, customers, employees, whomever, about a breach if there is one. Have certain measures, have an incident report, and so on and so forth. So doing these would ensure your compliance with data protection and cybersecurity. These 7 steps concludes the beginner compliance checklist. If you are a beginner, once you are able to tick off these 7 items, you are sure that your business is on the right track. I can understand how people get lost in the planning stage and they say, oh no, I want to ensure that this is right before I start my business. I want to ensure that I have this ticked off the list before I start my business. You can do that, but it will waste your time. The best way to go about this is to start the business. Obviously, you've picked the right business structure, you've reserved the name, and you've actually begun operations. Now, as you begin operations, within the first 6 months to 1 year of your operations, these are items that you need to actively tick off your list. Don't say, oh, we need to, because you wouldn't know how much data, if we're talking about data privacy, you wouldn't know how much data comes through your system that you need to process, or even what countries you need to process them from. So actively start your company and tick these items off the list as you go. But yeah, other than that little disclaimer, this concludes our beginner checklist. We have covered the beginner compliance checklist, and now we're moving on to the advanced compliance checklist, applicable to startups on the cusp of fundraising, startups in the thick of it, or even businesses looking for the next level of compliance in their business because they want to grow and they want to scale their business. This advanced checklist is for you. Step number 1 is regulatory frameworks, but for industry-specific compliance. Different industries have different rules and regulations and laws that apply to them. For instance, if you are a fintech startup now in Nigeria, you need to get certain CBN permits and licenses. If you are in the e-commerce, you would deal more with consumer protection, payment security, data protection. If you are in the health industry, you would deal with more of the NHIS regulations, the patient confidentiality laws, and so on and so forth. So what industry are you in? When you figure out the industry that you are in, find out the licenses and the permits that are required for you to practice in your industry and obtain them. Corporate governance standards. Now you have moved up you have leveled up. You've moved up from being a startup, from being a small business, a new business, into being a structured corporation. And with it comes certain corporate governance responsibilities. Corporate governance are a set of practices and procedures that control and direct your company. It regulates the relationship between the stakeholders of your company. And every company, no matter your niche, no matter your stage, has 4 major stakeholders. The government for regulatory compliance, customers because they affect your bottom line, your employees because they manage the day-to-day operations of your company, and your shareholders/investors because they literally own the company. Now, corporate governance manages the relationship between all of these stakeholders and the company. So things like filing annual return or any other kind of administrative necessity that you need as a corporation, it falls under corporate governance, and you need to be aligned with those practices and procedures. Step 3, tax optimization and compliance. Now, for the beginners, I emphasize the importance of understanding the tax incentives and the tax obligations that apply to your specific company and taking advantage of that. Now, in this stage, we move a step further, because it's not enough to file your VAT or to pay your company income tax. Now, you need to actually look into the law, find the legal loopholes that certain tax provisions give you, and you need to take advantage of those. Do you need to apply for a pioneer status? Do you need to register your company in a country that operates a territorial tax system so that 1, you can scale your business internationally, and 2, take advantage of their tax incentives? It is in this stage that you need to start figuring that out so that you can optimize cash flow and retain some of the profits or some of the revenue. Step 4 is intellectual property portfolio management. Now, in the beginner checklist, we talked about how it's important for you to even identify what intellectual assets you have and go about protecting them. But in this advanced stage, now it's time for you to actually expand your portfolio and manage the intellectual property assets that you have within your arsenal. Now, intellectual property is such a wide topic. It's not limited to just copyright. There are trade secrets, there are trademarks, there are patents. You need to identify each and every one of them. You need to protect them, but you also need to think about scalability. Now, if I want to move into country B, do I have global IP protection to cover my intellectual property in the next country, so that it's not when I get there, now I'm going through the stress of registering nationally there, and I move to the next place and I register nationally there. That is not the right way to go about it. You need to consult a lawyer so that they can help you come up with a global IP registration / management strategy. And you also need to learn to leverage your IP, your intellectual property, as an asset, because newsflash, it actually is an asset. A lot of companies make money simply by assigning others the rights to use their intellectual property. So you need to learn to leverage your intellectual property and actually make money from it. Step 5, data protection and cybersecurity compliance. For the beginners, we talked about even making sure that you identify these common threads that run through data protection policies. But for those that are more advanced, you need to not only find the common threads that run across the various jurisdictions, but you also need to, first of all, have a data protection officer that helps you manage this influx of data that you have at your disposal. Not only that, you need to put in place certain more advanced cybersecurity measures. For instance, an incident report strategy or an incident strategy. You need to have that in place. You need to conduct annual data audits. What data do I have? Who were the third-party vendors, suppliers, or providers that I made use of? From what countries did my data subjects come from? 6. Contractual risk management. Contracts, or the lack thereof, can make or break your business. So it's very, very important that you take each and every relationship that you have with your stakeholders and other partners, very importantly, by documenting them. In this stage, you should have a dedicated lawyer that is going to handle your contracts throughout their entire life cycle, from the negotiation stage to the archival stage. In another video, I will talk about contract lifecycle management so that you can have, a more in-depth knowledge on it. But you need to manage and handle your contracts properly. What dispute resolution mechanisms do you need for each contract, for each individual in the specific jurisdiction? Because you're going to obviously contract with people that are not in your specific locale. What are the dispute resolution tools that are applicable across border? How will that contract be terminated in the event of non-compliance with the terms of the contract? How will you enforce it? And so on and so forth. That's why it's very important for you to, one, have a dedicated pair of eyes, specifically a lawyer, to manage that, and also regularly review your contract so that you can manage contractual risks that your company is susceptible to. 7. Compliance with ESG, that's like environmental, social, and governmental policies. The world today is becoming more environmentally conscious and more societally conscious. So you need to align your business with those principles, because let's face it, even investors are looking for businesses that are ESG aligned. So you need to align your businesses or your business with that. What are the specific ESG principles that apply to your niche, that apply to your specific industry? Are you in compliance with that? Do you need to change up a few things to be in compliance with that? That's something that you and your in-house team needs to come up with. And you need to figure that out. Step number 8, securities and financing. Now you are no longer a startup, a new business. You have moved into being a structured corporation. Therefore, you're going to have to deal with securities and financing. And there is a lot that comes with that requires a video all on its own, which I will do. But for now, for the purposes of this checklist, you need to understand the types of financing or the types of financial instruments that are best suited to your company and to your capacity as a founder or even as a startup, so that you don't go bite more than you can chew. Which financial instruments work for you? Do you prefer bonds? Do you prefer debt? Do you prefer convertible notes? Do you prefer equity? You need to figure this out. You need to figure out the category of the investors that you are issuing these securities to, whether they are accredited or non-accredited. You need to figure out, also, to what stage are you? Are you in the fundraising stage? Are you in the exiting stage? Figure this out, and once you answer this item from your checklist. Item number 9, we have anti-competition, anti-corruption, and anti-money laundering laws and principles. I know I kind of just stacked all of them together into one, but I would explain. For anti-competition, while monopolies are allowed, monopolization is not allowed. So monopolies is like you're one of zero. You're the only one competing in your industry. Like you own at least 80% of the market comes to you to satisfy that specific need. And that's fine. The law doesn't have a problem with that. Where you would run into issues is where you try to monopolize the industry. So you take active steps to repel competition, which is why every other day there's an issue with Google or there's an issue with Meta or something like that, because they've taken active steps to monopolize the market, and the laws frown upon that. Now, moving on to the other aspects, we have the anti-corruption and anti-money laundering laws. Now, we have moved into the world of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and digital assets of varying degrees and types, and the ways of misappropriating funds have increased. People have gotten smarter. So you need to ensure that whatever funds come through your business, whether to your business or through your business, they are not funds that are potentially going to be used to finance terrorism or that have previously been used to finance terrorism. You need to check the funds that come to you and through you with a fine tooth pick so that you don't run afoul of the law. And also with your client, and how can you do this? With KYC obligations, that's know your customer obligations, by sending out certain forms for them to fill, collecting certain data again. So you need to just make sure that each and every one of these things are ticked off the list. Item number 10, export controls and sanctions. Export controls and sanctions. And this particularly is applicable to businesses and startups that have hardware or that sell physical products. You need to be aware of the shipping regulations, the export and import regulations that affect your niche or that affect your physical product, because for each and every country has each and every export and import regulations. So you need to know what those are for your specific niche and apply them accordingly. I think that concludes it for our ultimate business checklist that we divided into two. The beginner checklist, we had about 7 items on it, and the advanced checklist, we had about 10 items on it. If you're one and this video is too much and you want something that you can actually see, like something you can actually see and work with, I've created this ultimate compliance checklist into a PDF, and it's very easy for you to download and use. The link is in the description below, so just go get it and you can have this in your inbox ready to use whenever you need it. As we've realized by the content of this video, compliance is something that helps you build a resilient company, so that no matter what happens, your company has a strong base, a strong foundation to be able to, number one, grow sustainably, and number two, withstand certain issues that are likely to arise by virtue of your industry or simply by virtue of you being in operation. With this checklist, both the beginner checklist and the advanced checklist, you are not just staying out of trouble. You are signaling to your investors, your employees, to your customers, even to the government that, hey, you're here and you're serious and you actually mean business. And it also helps your reputation in the long run, because now you're sure that, okay, you have all of the legal items ticked off. And in my next video, I will walk you through an airtight compliance management system that helps you manage all of the items on this checklist, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. It helps you manage all of these items so that they can run on, at least autopilot 70% of the time. 70% of the time. It still requires human oversight, but 70% of the time, it can work automatically. That's in the next video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be reminded of it when it does come out. Thank you guys.